You're not the mayor.
Things change. You don't really think you'll win, do you?
Things change.
Meow.
Batman Returns is my favorite Batman movie. Full stop. Now, before y'all rip me to shreds, let me make one thing perfectly clear. I am not saying that Batman Returns is the best Batman movie. I think Tim Burton's first film, Nolan's Dark Knight, and Mask of the Phantasm could all vie for that crown. But if you ask me subjectively which Batman film I like to watch the most, it's Returns. This movie is just Tim Burton unhinged. It's what happens when a studio gives a blank check to a weirdo auteur and says, just do what you want. And oh my god, did he. This movie is like a superhero version of 1932's Freaks crossed with every German expressionist film ever made. It's so personal, so over-the-top, and shockingly weird that you can't help but enjoy it as an insight into Tim's head. And don't get me wrong, the first Batman film has plenty of Burtonisms, but there was a lot of hand-holding by the studio. But this is just pure Burton at his most batshit.
You admire it.
I admire its purity.
But while there's plenty to love, there's also a lot of problems. It's too self-indulgent, goes all over the place, is riddled with plot holes, and has too many characters and subplots. And yet, I just don't care. I love it all the same. That's what makes it a guilty pleasure, because those problems do come with a twinge of guilt. And I can still enjoy the film, but yeah, they do irk me. So what are they? Well, your basic stuff like how the hell did the clowns get blueprints for the Batmobile? An earlier draft explained it, but it never made it to the final cut. Then there's continuity errors, like where the hell did Harvey Dent go? He's in the first film, then disappears, then returns in the third movie, where they give us this quick memo that, oh yeah, he's got some acid in the face or something. Oh, and he's white now. In reality, Warner Brothers bought Billy D. Williams out of his contract, but I would have killed to see his take on Two-Face, especially considering how disastrously hilarious Tommy Lee Jones's performance was. One way or another, we completely missed a step between films 1 and 3. But the biggest problem with this movie is the main villain himself, the Penguin. Unlike Catwoman, who is near perfect, seriously, I wouldn't change a thing, Penguin is just all over the place. I think some of this is a disconnect between what the writers wanted and how the director interpreted it. Clearly, Burton's sympathies lie with the Penguin. He sort of sees him as this tragic Phantom of the Opera character, horribly disfigured, shunned by society, and yearning to break free from the sewers. Unfortunately, the screenplay undercuts Burton's empathy every step of the way. I mean, this is literally a guy who breaks out of the sewers, and the first thing he does, the first thing, is write a list of children he wants to murder.
Jesus.
And that's not his plan B or C or D after everything else doesn't work out. That is literally his plan A. Now, call me crazy, but I have a little problem working up any empathy for that sort of person. It doesn't matter how much sad Danny Elfman music you play. And even worse, this probably isn't the first time he's done this. Bruce reads an old police report about missing children at the Red Triangle Circus. Kids that were never found.
Wow, that's messed up.
Holy crap. No joke. This would be John Wayne Gacy's Hallmark Christmas movie of the week. So yeah, this guy's just a straight up child murderer. And I don't mind this movie's darkness. If you want to make him an irredeemable monster, go ahead. That could be an interesting interpretation, but if you want us to feel something for this guy, which Burton clearly does, you can't introduce your character as a literal baby killer. And what gets me is, this whole plot thread goes nowhere. There's a 90-minute buildup about this damn list, and then when the Penguin goes to execute his plan, Batman just drops in like, haha, stupid coyote, foiled your plan instantly, beep beep. So then he just launches an army of penguins, and why wasn't that his plan A? Gee, it's almost like there were 3 writers attached to this film. Sam Hamm's unused script, Daniel Waters' rewrite, and then a further uncredited rewrite by Wesley Strick. It's a miracle this film is even watchable, but as much as I love it, the problems are still there. So how do we fix it? Well, I had read somewhere that in an early draft of the script, Max Schreck was supposed to be Penguin's brother. This makes so much sense, it isn't even funny. Think about it. You have one brother who got everything he always wanted. The other was tossed away. Both are monsters, one by choice, another by circumstances. However, the public sees one as a saint and the other as a freak. And through manipulation, envy, Machiavellian schemes, and brute violence, both their lives come to a bad end. It's downright biblical. And it further expands upon the already biting social satire of the movie, where the maniacs aren't always the freaks. And that's something I love about Max. He's the real villain of the movie. A puppet master of pure uncaged capitalism taken to its furthest excess. And the beauty of it is, he doesn't even need to put on a costume. He just walks around in broad daylight. Now that's scary. It's one of the reasons Roland Daggett was one of my favorite Batman the Animated Series villains. Sometimes the real monsters work 9 to 5. If Max and Oswald are brothers, how do we judge which one is worse? You see how this suddenly gets a little more interesting? An even stranger revelation is an earlier draft of the script had Harvey Dent in it, and they morphed the character into Max Schreck. Just how that was supposed to work, I don't know, but it does tell me that Billy D. Williams' Dent was supposed to show up at some point, and then they decided to drop him from the project altogether, which, again, destroys any hope for a character arc. So, is it possible to throw these jettisoned items back into the script? Well, it's a tall order because Batman Returns is already stuffed like a Thanksgiving turkey, but I think it can be done. You just have to cut a couple of plot points that didn't make sense anyway, and then establish a firm connection between these characters, particularly their motivations and interactions. So let's jump off a ledge and dive headfirst into this dark as hell cult Christmas classic. The movie opens the same. Penguin is tossed into the sewers and Schreck is still trying to sell his power plant idea to an incredulous mayor. Outside Gotham Plaza, we see Harvey Dent being wished good luck by his newlywed wife. Now, I kind of figured I'd use the animated series as a template here, and Kelly McGinnis seemed like as good an option as any for 1992, so yeah. She adjusts his coat as Harvey's size. He says something to the effect of,
"What do you say we skip town and let the city deal with its own problems for once?"
Or 4 more weeks and we get to spend our first Christmas together as husband and wife.
Harvey pulls out a coin.
"Tell you what, heads we scram, tails we stay."
He flips the coin and sighs when he sees the results.
Damn.
Grace kisses him.
Good luck.
Then the mayor runs into Harvey Dent and both head for the Christmas tree podium. "I think Max is gonna move against us. You need to hurry it up. We need something, anything on him."
It won't be easy. Schreck is a smooth operator. He knows how to cover his tracks, more so than Grissom ever did. But with a little bit of luck, I'm sure we'll find something.
"And what does Lady Luck say about my speech?" Dent flips a coin. It comes up with the scar side up. He decides to bluff.
I'm sure you'll do fine."
Right after that, Schreck threatens the mayor with a recall, to which the mayor says he doesn't have a candidate. Like in the original, Schreck is abducted by the Red Triangle Circus gang and brought to the Penguin. The Penguin's motivations are the same. He wants to find his parents and live above ground, but he's hiding something. Meanwhile, Selina discovers Schreck's secret and is pushed out the window. At home, she transforms into Catwoman, and from here on out, her story is basically the same, so we'll skip past most of her scenes. So after Schreck orchestrates Oswald's little welcome home ceremony, Bruce Wayne reads an old police report about the Red Triangle Circus and a mysterious bird boy. Here we drop the disappearing children plot point and instead substitute reports of burglaries and violent attacks in wealthy homes. The idea being that the Penguin was running a crime ring within the circus, targeting rich folks in every town they moved through. We then cut to the Batmobile passing the Hall of Records. Batman suspects the Penguin knows who his parents are. "There's something else," he tells Alfred. Inside, we see the Penguin examining records and writing names. However, the names he's writing down are chicken scratch. The whole thing is a ruse. We then cut to the cemetery. Schreck and Chip accompany the Penguin to the gravesite. "Dad, why do we have to be here?" "He said it was important. We're like family to him." "Don't say that. Just play along." "Might I remind you that this thing is trying to blackmail us?" "Look, Gotham will forget about him soon enough. And when it does, we'll make sure he stays forgotten. Got it?" They approach the gravesite. The Penguin drops to his knees and lays roses down. As he does so, Chip stares at the stone in horror. Max withholds a certain rage. Tense. "Dad, you said when you first started out you wanted a name that commanded more authority. So you legally changed it to your mom's maiden name, Shrek. And your dad's last name? Cobblepot. The Penguin stares at the press gathered outside the cemetery gates, then looks up at Max and flashes an evil grin.
Do you want to tell them, Max, or should I?
And now we get his game. He hid his origin so he could publicly out his connection to Max, cause knowing Max's ruthlessness, he figured it wouldn't be long before Shrek arranged a happy accident, which is much harder now that everything's in the news. We then cut to Max and the Penguin addressing the press outside the cemetery. Nobody, and I mean nobody, is more surprised than I could be right now. But while I may have lost the respect I had for my parents, I've gained something greater. A brother. The Q&A continues and Penguin gives his real name, Oswald. He then admits he forgives his parents. Gotham soon falls in love with him. The next day, we see Harvey Dent and a couple of officers in Shrek's office. The officers are dragging boxes out. Dent is examining some files as Shrek looks on. I can assure you that's everything, and you'll find nothing of interest in there.
This is a disorganized mess. Don't you have a secretary? You know, that mousy one?
Before Shrek can make up an excuse, Bruce Wayne walks in. Dent is ecstatic, dropping the file to his side and shaking Bruce's hand.
Bruce!
Harvey?
How you doing, old buddy?
I take it you need no introductions?
Oh, Bruce and I go way back. You know, he was the first one who backed my campaign.
How noble.
Oh, it's been too long, man. Haven't seen you since that,
Charity fundraiser.
Yeah, the big party at your place. Oh, that was a blast. You remember that, Max?
Yes, I remembered well. I wasn't invited.
Oversight on Alfred's part, I'm sure.
You know, Lady Luck was not with me that night. I lost everything I brought with me, and that 200th anniversary celebration still went bankrupt.
What, did you forget your coin?
Coin?
He's got this thing. Kind of a system. More of a nervous tick, if you ask me.
Tick?
Dent whips out the coin and flashes it to Bruce.
Let me tell you something. This coin is never wrong. I should tell you about the mayor's speech.
Are you two finished, or should I go down and shop in my own store while we wait? Dent smiles and rolls his eyes knowingly to Bruce.
I'll be in touch with both of you.
Dent leaves the officers as Max shows Bruce into the conference room. In the conference room, Bruce stonewalls against the power plant. Like in the original, he accuses Shrek of having a crime boss like Oswald Cobblepot in his pocket. Crime boss shows what you know, mister. For the man that's born with the silver spoon, Oswald is Gotham's new golden boy. If his parents hadn't 86'd him, you two might have been bunkies in prep school.
His parents? You mean your parents, Max? And between the two of us, I think we know which one of you got the silver spoon.
Wayne, I will not stand for this any longer. If my assistant were here, she already would have escorted you out the...
Anywhere he wants.
This is where Selina enters the picture. Like in the original, she plays it dumb as a shocked Max makes up excuses for her injuries. Per Max's request, she escorts Bruce out. As Bruce and Selina walk to the elevator, they continue their conversation.
You must have really gotten under his skin.
You noticed?
I notice everything about Max. His creepy cufflinks, his stupid chihuahua, the way he always lugs that ugly briefcase around wherever he goes.
Yeah, why is that?
Sentimental value. His mother gave it to him. Baby's first Christmas gift.
Bruce bites his lip and says, huh. His eyes dart away for a second, as if he suddenly has an idea. He returns to Selina.
Anything else I should know?
Well, I could tell you, but then he'd have to kill you.
Wait, wouldn't you have to kill?
Me? It's early. I haven't clocked in yet.
You know, you don't seem like the type to take orders from him.
The conversation then proceeds like in the original, with Bruce asking her out before the elevator abruptly closes. Back in the conference room, Chip and Max stare at Bruce and Selina leaving. Chip asks if Max believes the amnesia story. Max says it doesn't matter. If she tries to blackmail me, I'll drop her out a higher window. In the meantime, I've got bigger fish to fry. Chip interrupts. You know, Dad, I've been meaning to talk to you about that. Maybe we're being too hasty here. This could be an opportunity. Gotham loves him. Sure, he may be a little rough around the edges. That is the understatement of the century. But if you can train a dog, maybe you can train a bird. And with him in our pocket, as mayor, run him in the recall. No. Maybe. Yes. Chip, you're living up to your namesake. Right off the old block. Come on, let's make this bird fly. We then cut to Bruce downstairs, pretending to shop in Shrek's department store. However, his eyes are on the elevator the whole time. Shrek and Chip suddenly exit the elevator. Bruce drops everything and moves towards Shrek. He bumps into Max, forcing him to drop his briefcase, which Bruce picks up.
Max, I just want to let you know, even though we don't see eye to eye, I'll keep my eyes and ears open for new opportunities.
As Bruce is talking, he slips a listening device onto the bottom of Shrek's briefcase. I appreciate that, Bruce. If you'll excuse me. Bruce smiles like a Cheshire cat as Max leaves. Per the original movie, Max convinces Oswald to run for mayor. Later, the Red Triangle Circus Gang attacks Gotham at night, and the Penguin reveals his plan to Batman before Catwoman interrupts. It's around here that we add a scene or two. Oswald tries his best to fit in with Gotham's elite. He grows to love the attention. Shrek tries to train him with a PR firm, suggesting gloves over his flippers, sushi and caviar instead of raw fish. Things seem to be going as well as can be expected. Oswald is still a pervy slob, yet he's still trying his best to fit in with the 1%. He thinks he's been accepted, but at a campaign fundraiser, he overhears the rich donors to his campaign making fun of his appearance and behavior. In the shadows, he grows incensed as Max steps in.
Nothing changes. I simply left one circus for another.
You can't expect people to change overnight. It took me years to build my image, cultivate relationships.
But that's the difference between you and me, Max. You get to choose how other people see you. I, on the other hand, do not.
You just don't understand the game. You need to make yourself indispensable. It's like Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer. You get that one down in the sewers? Had a very shiny nose. Other reindeer used to laugh and call him names. Well, what happened? He saved the day. Now Santa's got him flying Top Gun every Christmas Eve while the other reindeer are sitting downwind. Be like Rudolph.
Ah, that stupid reindeer was exploited. If he didn't have that light bulb, Santa would have dropped him like a live hand grenade.
He provided a service, and then people learned to love him.
And when I'm all used up, Max, what happens then? They gonna flush me down the toilet like good old Mom and Dad?
Not on my watch. I promise. Now come on. Let's go down in history.
Ah, fine.
He returns to the party and tries to schmooze over the crowd. Later on, Catwoman shows up at Penguin's place and forms an alliance with him. Penguin reveals his plan is to lure Batman into a trap and ambush him with the Clown Gang. Pretty simple. But Catwoman counters that Batman would have more power as a martyr. It'd be better to turn him into what he hates most.
Namely us.
That's when Penguin forms a plan. Much like the Water script, he kidnaps the Ice Princess, drops her off a building, and frames Batman for the crime. But this time, there's no possessed Batmobile. Instead, Batman escapes to his vehicle with the cops hot on his tail. A chase ensues, and Batman causes a lot of collateral damage during the flight, before finally shrinking his Batmobile to slip through a thin alleyway. The result is a much more truncated action sequence without plot holes. After Batman's fall from grace, Shrek visits Oswald and begs him to be low-key with Batman from now on. He worries that killing a celebrity may bring too much heat their way.
I'm just saying we need some discretion. Some of these incidents have been too high profile. Keep in mind, I've got a legacy to protect. The public can't know what—
Oh, don't worry, Max. When I'm elected, I'll take care of the wretched pin-headed puppets of Gotham. And behind the scenes, you can do whatever you want.
Just take it easy.
Ah, what's to worry about? You gotta admit, I played this stinking city like a harp from hell.
We close on Max's briefcase and the Bat-Bug. Then we cut to Bruce listening in on them at the Batcave. He pauses the tape as the Penguin laughs.
Gotcha.
We cut to City Hall later that night. In a smoky office, Dent is pinballing between the police and his own lawyers, growing more exasperated as he has to deal with both Batman and the Shrek investigation simultaneously. He chomps on his cigar and dismisses his team. Then he pours himself a stiff drink, leans back in his chair, and rests his cigar on an ashtray. Suddenly, the lights go off. He grabs a gun. There's a whoosh of a cape and the lit cigar blows out. We fade in from the darkness to atop Gotham City Hall, the city blinking in the background as snow swirls across the roof. Dent stands precariously close to the edge of the roof, staring at Batman. It's clear he doesn't know what to trust anymore, the yawning abyss or the Bat.
Are you out of your mind? The entire city is looking for you and you just show up at City Hall?
We need to talk.
Talk? You know I could lose my job just looking at you? They say you killed the Ice Princess.
That wasn't me.
Maybe, maybe not. But my hands are tied. This administration is done working with vigilantes.
The Penguin and Shrek are behind these attacks. Take this to your people.
Bruce hands him a file with a tape in it. Dent examines it, thumbing through the papers and singling out the audio cassette. He waves it in Batman's face.
Oh, and I'm sure this evidence was all obtained legally, right?
Desperate times call for desperate measures.
Desperate measures also get you desperate time. Look, between the two of us, I've bent the rules before and always regretted it. When I look at you, I see that same little itch in me, telling me it's okay if it's only this once. But then there's always another, and another. And pretty soon I start wondering how far I need to go down the rabbit hole before I end up just like you.
We all have to live with our choices.
Choices or chances? You want me to gamble everything on this? Well, let's see what the fates have to say about that.
Dent pulls out his lucky coin and flips it. Batman grabs it in midair and places it firmly in Dent's hand.
We make our own luck, Harvey.
Batman then dives off the roof. Dent looks over the edge. He's gone. He examines the coin in his clenched fist. It's the good side up. The next day, Oswald is giving a speech to the crowd. Bruce watches from the Batcave. Suddenly, Dent steps onto stage with a cadre of police officers and Commissioner Gordon. He explains that Oswald is being charged with numerous crimes in connection with the Red Triangle circus attacks. Oswald turns to the crowd and claims this is all a misunderstanding. He'll explain everything. As he talks, the audio switches to the recordings Bruce made.
Oh, don't worry, Max. When I'm elected, I'll take care of the wretched pin-headed puppets of Gotham.
Back at the cave, we see Bruce smiling as he fudges with the audio on his disc. The crowd starts throwing tomatoes at Oswald. He watches in horror as Gotham's wealthiest families slip out of sight. Shrek follows them, abandoning Oswald with an indifferent shrug. Enraged, Oswald opens fire on the crowd and escapes back to the sewers. Back at the old Gotham Zoo, the Penguin returns to his circus gang. There, he forsakes his real name and explains his new plan.
I am not a human! I am an animal! Cold-blooded! It's time! Gather round! This is a list of every wealthy donor to my campaign. Addresses, phone numbers, friends, relatives, and children. In these files is a list of every firstborn son of Gotham's insufferable upper crust. Little ones meant for great things, just like I was. And like me, a terrible fate awaits them. Tonight, while their parents party, they'll be dreaming away, safe in their cribs, their soft beds, and we will snatch them, carry them into the sewer, and toss them into a deep, watery grave.
Like in the original, one clown stands up against the plan and gets shot for it. We then move on to Shrek's annual Masquerade Ball, where we see Bruce searching for Selina. A voice cuts through the crowd.
Bruce?
Bruce turns to see a masked blonde brandishing a champagne glass. For a second, he's tricked into thinking it's Selina. Then the woman removes her mask. It's Grace Dent, Harvey's wife.
Grace?
Aren't you forgetting something?
She flashes her wedding ring.
It's Mrs. Dent now.
Well, I'm sorry, I just...
Relax. This is what normal people do, Bruce.
She sarcastically jabs him in the arm and smiles. He winces, probably bruised from previous fights.
You need to loosen up. Take a few tips from Harvey. Oh, he'll be so happy. You know, he didn't want to come, but open bar, am I right? So what brings you out of the cave?
Bruce looks around, seemingly distracted.
Honestly, lady friend.
Why, Bruce Wayne, you're human after all. Well, don't let me interrupt you. We can catch up when the party simmers down. I'll tell Harvey you're here.
Yeah, where is Harvey?
You know, I'm not sure.
We cut to Harvey Dent, cigar in hand and martini glass in another. Ironically, he's dressed as the Phantom of the Opera, with the right side of his face covered by a white mask. Shrek, also in costume, approaches him. Mr. Dent?
Max.
I hear your office is investigating my estranged brother. I just hope you keep in mind that any connection I may have had with Oswald was under duress. I'm just as much of a victim of him as the city is.
You know, Max, I wasn't gonna come to this grand ball of yours, but I heard it through the grapevine that you're quite the dancer. I can't wait to see you tap your way out of this one.
Dent puts the cigar back in his mouth and leaves Max to himself. Max watches, visibly annoyed. He shouts as Dent disappears into the crowd. "Enjoy the open bar!" Afterwards, Max spots Bruce and carries on the same conversation he did in the original film, leading to one of the greatest Christopher Walken retorts ever.
Yawn.
Then Bruce meets up with Selena, where she admits she's going to kill Shrek. The two then accidentally reveal their identities to each other and decide to go outside. We then cut to the center of the dance floor, where Dent is looking for his wife. Suddenly an explosion rips through the dance floor, sending Dent across the room. He lands near Bruce, now separated from Selena in the chaos. Bruce looks towards the corner and sees Dent literally on fire. His wife screams from a distance. Bruce grabs a tablecloth and pats Dent down, extinguishing the flames. Through the smoke, we can surmise Dent is charred. Ironically, the Phantom mask protected half his face. We can't see the other side. Bruce turns to Mrs. Dent and says, "Wait here." He approaches the hole in the floor where the Penguin has emerged. Then Penguin gleefully explains his kidnapping plot to Gotham's socialites. Per his pleas, Penguin takes Max instead of Chip. As they step aboard, Penguin notices Dent, crumpled in a ball and clouded in smoke.
Ah! Looks like I got a twofer!
Then they slowly descend in the duck vehicle. As the vehicle sinks, Bruce taps it with his hand, planting a tracking device. He then runs off, presumably to the Batcave. Now, unlike the original, Batman has no time to save the children from the clown train. He has to launch from the Batcave, and this time around, it's a smaller number of kidnapped children, enough to just fit the one small train, so the clowns are able to accomplish their mission in time. Back at the zoo, the Penguin taunts the children in a giant cage suspended over a subterranean lake. Shrek, meanwhile, stands in another smaller cage off to the side. His minion in the announcer booth warns penguins the cops are approaching. Surprised but undaunted, the Penguin says he already anticipated that. We then cut to him addressing his army of rocket birds, telling them to defend their homeland. The army then launches and sets up a perimeter around the zoo, firing rockets on the police. As cop cars explode everywhere, they pull back, powerless to enter. Cut to Batman, zooming through the sewers in his subterranean boat. Alfred informs him via telecom that he had left an anonymous tip with Gotham PD, detailing where the Penguin was hiding out. We then see that Bruce is tracking the duck boat to its source via radar. Like in the original, he also uses Alfred and his own tech to scramble the penguins after they get in range. The birds turn around and head back into the zoo, letting the cops advance. Much like the original, the Penguin tries to bolt in the duck vehicle as Batman approaches. Using his radar, Batman gives chase and crashes into him. Then, after a fistfight, Batman reveals the penguins are under his control. If the Penguin doesn't give up the location of the children, it's implied the birds will get it. Penguin launches into a rage, shouting, "My babies!" He knocks the device out of Batman's hands. The Penguin grabs the remote and pushes it, presumably deactivating the rockets. Unfortunately, Penguin miscalculated. Instead, the rockets launch and Penguin crashes into the lake below. Meanwhile, Shrek tricks the circus monkey and escapes with the keys. The kids, still trapped in the other cage, watch him escape. The eldest boy shouts to him,
"Hey mister, help us out!"
You're on your own, kid.
Shrek shrugs and moves to jump out of the cage. As he does so, a cracking whip pulls him into the water. The children look up and scream. The chain is snapping. Batman glides in and lands atop the cage. He detaches his grappling hook from his belt, hooking the end of one cable to the top of the cage. Then he fires the grappling hook to a steel girder across the way, tightening it. "Hold on," he tells the children. The older boys shield the toddlers as the other kids grab onto the bars. The chain snaps and the cage swings across the lake thanks to Batman's cable. It slides to a crashing halt on the concrete. The kids are a little bruised and scared, but very much alive. Batman uses his brute strength to rip open the busted door. Sparks fall from above. In the distance, he sees Shrek being pulled out of the water by Catwoman. He tells the kids to run. Outside, we see Gordon motioning to the kids, urging them towards the police and paramedics. Inside, Batman confronts Shrek and Selena. The rest of the scene plays out just like the original, with Selena refusing Bruce's offer and killing Shrek. Once again, the Penguin rises from the water and promptly dies. He's escorted by the Penguin pallbearers, but this time it carries a little more sadness, since his nefarious scheme was really brought on by Shrek's scheming and Gotham's rejection of him. As he sinks into the water, we cut to Gotham City Hospital. At the hospital, we follow Bruce carrying flowers. We wind up in an ICU unit. On the bed lays Harvey, unconscious, one entire side covered in bandages except for an exposed, lidless eye. His wife stands over him, suppressing tears. Gordon stands at her side as Bruce walks in.
You should get some rest, my dear.
You're right.
Mrs. Dent greets Bruce as he enters.
Thank you for coming. If it weren't for you, Harvey would... You're a good friend.
Bruce nods as she leaves. He sets the flowers down on the table and turns to Gordon.
How is he, Commissioner?
Well, he'll survive, but his career won't.
What?
Bruce notices Harvey is cuffed to the bed.
I don't get it. He helped save the city.
What he did was violate numerous ethics laws, Bruce. And after we spent the past year rooting out corruption in the department... Oh, the hypocrisy of it. When the press gets a hold of this, and I'm sure they will, they'll be hell to pay.
Well, what about the Batman? Couldn't he?
The Batman is where we think he got his information from.
But, couldn't he vouch for him or something?
Wouldn't matter. Batman is persona non grata after the whole Ice Princess debacle.
Surely you don't think.
Me? No. But try telling the public that. Unless you could magically produce a witness.
Bruce remains silent and sighs.
Exactly. I'm afraid we're gonna have to do without our winged friend. It's gonna be a long winter for the department. Longer for Harvey.
Well, certainly there's something you can do.
I'll do what I can. With a little luck, he'll avoid any jail time. But I fear his professional life in this city is finished. You'd best be on your way, Bruce. It is Christmas after all.
We close on Harvey's face. His good eye is closed, but his left eye, with the eyelid blown off, is wide open. Focusing on the eye, we see a single tear drip down his bloodied, bandaged cheek as Bruce and Gordon leave. We then cut to Bruce in the car with Alfred, ending on the same note as the original, finding the cat, wishing each other a Merry Christmas, and hoping for something better. Finally, the bat signal flashes again, signaling that perhaps Gotham and its citizens aren't truly done with Batman yet. And, wouldn't you know it, Catwoman is still alive. And there you have it. Does it fix every single problem with the movie? No. This is still a very crowded film and not all that Batman-centric, but it does make the Penguin more sympathetic. He's still a monster, but that psychotic child murdering side of him doesn't come out until he's pushed over the edge. As for the abductions, they serve more than just a cheap MacGuffin. This time they are the climax which Batman has to solve. And the dark social satire is played up even more with a gothic family tragedy of old money, buried secrets, and warring brothers. Furthermore, Dent is now in the movie, and it properly sets up a sequel where he will be the villain. While this might seem just as overstuffed as the original, keep in mind that we're only talking about a handful of dialogue scenes. Dent's scenes don't need to be all that in-depth. We just need the setup. He'll get his own movie next time around. The Penguin just needs a brief montage with him trying to fit into high society, and that makes his fall from grace and abandonment by Shrek and his high society friends all the more tragic. And let's not forget that a lot of nonsensical plot threads were dropped or tightened. And the new threads that do show up all interconnect and intersect. This makes it more Nolan-esque in its plotting. It may be longer, but not much longer than the original. I mean, has anybody noticed that all of Nolan's Dark Knight films actually clock in longer than Batman Returns? And while the ending may be even darker, one can expect that from the second film in a trilogy. This is Batman's darkest trial, akin to the disasters that befell him in Nolan's Dark Knight. In the end, I still love Batman Returns for what it gets right. Shrek, Catwoman, a different take on the Penguin, and while the script is messy from too many hands stirring the pot, the dialogue is legit amazing. I'm only attempting to address these problems because they mar an otherwise fantastic movie, a movie that often gets unfairly maligned by critics who just can't see the forest through the trees. Maybe you agree with me, maybe you don't. Either way, leave a comment. What would your version of the film look like? Or do you think it's just perfect? Let us know, and until next time...
Meow.